I had a favorite beloved English teacher in high school who asked us what life was all about, and most of us said happiness, which puts us in good company with our founding fathers, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And she wrote happiness in big upper caps on the board, and she crossed it out, and she said, you're going to have to be more specific. Happiness is too vague. So that's what I want to explore today. What does it mean to be joyful? What does it mean to have happiness in this season? Coming off of Yom Kippur, the chest-beating holiday. Now it's Sukkot, which is the season of our joy. But what does that mean? So let's look to our sources to gain some insight and try to answer that question. Our first source I'll read for us. It's from Deuteronomy, from Devarim. After the ingathering from your threshing floor and your vat, you shall hold the Feast of Booths for 7 days. You shall rejoice in your festival with your son and daughter, your male and female servant, the Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow in your communities. You shall hold a festival for the Lord your God 7 days in the place that the Lord will choose. For the Lord your God will bless all your crops and all your undertakings, and you shall have nothing but joy. V'haita ach sameach. Right? And earlier, v'samachta bechagecha. So if we're using this as some hints, what's the context here that helps inform what it means to be joyful? What is the context with which we are being and experiencing joy? I think Sheila said economics. Good, abundance, right? It's a harvest festival. Look at what we have. We have bounty. Right, it's hard, it's sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's happy to experience any sort of elevated form of joy if we don't have our basic needs met. Good, family, right? Look who you're surrounded with, right? Your son, your daughter, your not just your immediate family, right? It goes one further. Your community, right? The Levite, the stranger, the fatherless, the widow in your communities. It's not just your inner circle, but it's actually the outer circle. It's the margins, right? It's the people who don't have a place, don't have an inheritance. The Levites are not assigned a portion, right? So you share your portion with them. The fruit of your labor, like you've accomplished. Good. So maybe Shira is saying the meaning for life for her is not so much happiness, but purpose, which I want to underscore, because that's basically the thesis of this presentation, right? Barry, your hand was up. It was said? Great. By your community, which I think is what you were going to say. Go ahead. Yeah. Good. The joy of being present in life, the joy of looking back at your accomplishments, right? Which mirrors Yom Kippur in an interesting way. Yom Kippur is Cheshbon HaNefesh. We look back at the year before us for all of the flaws, all the ways in which we've missed the mark. Sukkot offers a very nice counter to Yom Kippur, where we're still retrospective, we're still looking back, but this is for the good. What about all the good from this year? What about all the fruits of our labor that we get to enjoy now? Good, we'll take just a couple more thoughts. Yeah. The beauty of all creation. Everybody loves the warm weather. I'm still LA, although Dodgers versus Mets, Rabbi Hal and I have this conflict. I'm like, I can root for the Mets too, it's okay. But I am still LA at heart, and I still think that this weather is a novelty. I actually love the cold. I love the snow. To me, ask me next year. You'll see me get jaded year after year. But what beauty to go out into nature and look at the wonder and the awe of nature around you, to get outside and to say, oh my God, this is a living, breathing earth, and it's got so much beauty to show off, and we're a part of this ecosystem. Good, I want us to keep going. Speaking of jaded, there are 3 texts ascribed to King Solomon. They are Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, Mishle, Proverbs, and Kohelet, or Ecclesiastes. And it's interesting if you track King Solomon becoming more jaded over the years, like me with Cleveland Winters, right? Shir HaShirim is the young lovers. Proverbs maybe is the peak of his wisdom as king. And then you get a sort of older, maybe cynical version of Solomon, and that'll come through as we read what he describes as joy, and I think you'll have an interesting reaction to it because it's a bit spicy, it's a bit controversial. This is our second source. Go, eat your bread in joy and drink your wine with a good heart, for your action was long ago approved by God. Let your clothes always be freshly washed, and your head never lack ointment. Enjoy happiness with a woman you love all the fleeting days of life that you have been granted to you under the sun, all your fleeting days. For that alone is what you can get out of life and out of the means you acquire under the sun. Whatever it is in your power to do, do with all your might, for there is no action, no reasoning, no learning, no wisdom in Sheol. Sheol can be interpreted as, so he's talking about the afterlife. Sheol in particular is sort of a limbo, is not sort of the bright olam haba, heaven kind of image, but more of a sort of emptiness where you are going. It's kind of a downer. What are your reactions to his? But he is talking about joy and what to get out of life. But what do you make of it? Go ahead, Rachel. Live every day to the fullest. Right, there is something about, if you go to a sort of nihilistic place and say life is meaningless, there's nothing to it. And then you go one step further and you embrace that meaninglessness, there's actually great joy to be found, right? Because you say, well, this might be all we get. But because it's limited, I'm going to make every day count, right? There's sort of, if there is not, and God willing, there is a world to come, and that there is a strong Jewish tradition of believing in life after this one. But if there isn't, how much more valuable is the time we have here, and how much more important it is to make every day count, right? A person of wisdom makes every day count. Go ahead, Bijan. Right. Right, and Havel, which is translated here as fleeting, can also mean breath, right? Our life is a breath. It's a passing shadow. One of my favorite, Rabbi Feinstein, who is here, was a scholar in residence who installed me recently. He says, we supposedly don't know how to say God's name. The Yud, Hey, and Vav, and Hey. We don't know how to pronounce it. And he said, I actually disagree. I think we do know how to pronounce it, and I think we pronounce it all the time. Yud, Hey is inhaling, and Vav, Hey is exhaling. Breath is how you pronounce God's name. And if you look at life that way, then don't take God's name in vain. It means don't let breath be wasted. Don't let this precious gift of life be underappreciated. So Michael is pointing out that the first text from our Torah, from Deuteronomy, is saying it's very communal, right? Versus Ecclesiastes, also our Torah, is very selfish. And comparing how joy, when there's a limit to how much joy can be experienced when you're alone. There is a story, and then we're going to go to the next text, but that someone wrote a letter to the Rabbi, the great Hasidic Rabbi, saying, I am depressed, I have, and explaining all the hard things in this person's life. I have this, I have that. And the Rebbe didn't respond with some great, profound rabbinic answer or Torah. He simply circled all the I's in the person's letter and returned it to them. And they realized that was my problem. That was my problem. Okay, speaking of, let's transition to our next text. This is teaching from the Hasidic Rebbe, a different Hasidic Rebbe. This is Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, and a story told about him that goes, the Rebbe was asked, what is the right way? That of sorrow or that of joy? And this is such a Jewish question, right? What are we supposed to be? Are we the breast-beating, sorrowful, somber people, or are we the joyful, dancing, singing people? What's the right way? He answered, "There are two kinds of sorrow and two kinds of joy. When a person broods over the misfortunes that have come upon him, when he cowers in a corner and despairs, that is a bad kind of sorrow, concerning which it is said, the divine presence does not dwell in a place of dejection. The other kind is the honest kind of grief of a person who knows what they lack. The same is true of joy. One who is devoid of inner substance, and in the midst of empty pleasures," which I think is what Michael was pointing out about the Kohelet piece, "does not feel it, nor tries to fill their lack, is a fool." Right? Any sort of hedonistic philosophy will result in, yeah, maybe it was a moment of some kind of pleasure or joy, but it's gone in a second. That's hevel, right? It's not a lasting kind of joy. But one who is truly joyful is like a person whose house has burned down, who feels their need deep in their soul and begins to build anew. Over every stone that is laid, their heart rejoices. It's amazing here to me that joy, true joy here, is found in the case of the person whose house just burned down and now has a new sense, like Shira said, of purpose. Now I have this opportunity to build anew and lay a new brick. That person is the one who's experiencing true joy because they have purpose. They have meaning in their life, something to do, something constructive, literally something constructive to rally behind. So similarly, I think the answer that's so brilliant here is that the question isn't what's the right thing, joy or sorrow. It's what kind of joy, what's the quality of your joy or what's the quality of your sorrow. Joy and sorrow can both be empty. And that's the wrong kind of joy and that's the wrong kind of sorrow. But they can also be full, abundant. Right? They can be filled with purpose. And that's the right kind of joy, and that's the right kind of sorrow. And I think this is so salient right now when we ask ourselves, how can we be joyful right now with everything going on in Israel, with everything going on in the world? God says, be joyful on Sukkot. It's a very difficult commandment to fulfill. How do we do it? Well, maybe we have to redefine, like my teacher, Miss Creasy, who wrote happiness on the board and crossed it out and said, be more specific. We can be sad, we can be full of sorrow and still experience joy if our sorrow is imbued with meaning and purpose. If our house just burned down, but now we feel we get this opportunity to lay a new brick. We'll finish off with our last couple final texts here. Another Hasidic Rabbi, Rabbi Nachman, the great Rabbi Nachman, says, "It is a great mitzvah to always be happy and to make every effort to determinedly keep depression and gloom at bay." This is coming from a rabbi who struggled with depression his whole life. And he's telling us it's a mitzvah, and a mitzvah is not a good deed. A mitzvah is an obligation to be happy, always happy, tamid. How? How could you possibly be saying that, especially from somebody who so intimately knows the depth of sorrow and pain? I think it's because his definition of happiness is specific, purpose, meaning. That doesn't mean don't be depressed. It means find purpose even in your sorrow. And that is an avenue towards joy. Final text comes from Soren Kierkegaard, just the first quote, and then it's Jewish commentary on the great 19th century Danish philosopher who wrote, "It takes moral courage to grieve. It takes religious courage to rejoice." I love that. I want to let it sit in the air for a second. That rejoicing is, in some regards, in a Kierkegaard, a choice. It's a choice. And it takes religious courage. It is one of the most poignant facts about Judaism and the Jewish people that our history has been shot through with tragedy, yet Jews never lost the capacity to rejoice, to celebrate in the heart of darkness, to sing the Lord's song, even in a strange land. There are Eastern faiths that promise peace of mind if we can train ourselves into habits of acceptance. Epicurus taught his disciples to avoid risks like marriage or a career in public life. Neither of these approaches is to be negated, yet Judaism is not a religion of acceptance, nor have Jews tended to seek the risk-free life. We can survive the failures and defeats if we never lose the capacity for joy. On Sukkot, we leave the security and comfort of our houses and live in a shack exposed to the wind, the cold, and the rain. Yet we call it Zman Simchatenu, our season of joy, That is no small part of what it means to be a Jew. Sukkot, the season of our joy, takes place in a shack outside in the cold and the rain. How do we experience joy in the darkness, in the cold, and the rain? Well, you can, and that's what Judaism is teaching us. You can. In fact, sometimes you must. So I want to wish everybody Azman Simchatenu, whether you're entering it from a place of joy or sorrow, we can still find joy, we can still find meaning and purpose even in our sorrow, and I hope it is a joyous and happy Chag Sukkot for us all. Chag Sameach.